Okay, hello. I'm going to go through a few steps to create your own WordPress instance using AWS. So, first of all, get into your Amazon console and go into the EC2 section here and start to launch a new instance. In this case, you have a wide selection of operating systems you can use. You can really use any of them, though probably not Windows. I'm going to stick with Ubuntu just because I'm familiar with it and I prefer, or I like that as a Linux distribution. Then you need to pick a tier, a type for which is going to hold your WordPress instance. So, for example, if it's just going to be a small site, then you can easily pick a t2.nano instance, and there's absolutely no problem with doing that. If it's just going to be for example, your own personal blog, and you know it's not going to have any, if it's not going to have many viewers at first, it's not too difficult to upgrade in the future. You can literally make an AMI of it and then create, that is, an image of your EC2 instance, and then recreate it later using exactly the same image. So I'm just going to use a t2.nano. Obviously they get more expensive as they get larger. If you're running a site for hundreds of thousands or even millions of users, you might want to look into specifically what you're looking for, whether it needs to be compute optimized or memory optimized. You're not going to need a GPU based virtual machine. So I'm just going to go with the smallest instance. You might want to try the micro instance, you might want to try small. I'm just going to use this one for now. Following on, the instance details, you're not going to need to enter anything into this. This is for more advanced sort of automated setup things. So we are going to definitely want a public IP address. The subnet doesn't really matter unless you want it to specifically be in a certain subnet. I'll put mine in, actually no, I'll just put mine in the default, since I don't need it to be part of an existing infrastructure and an existing VPC. A VPC is basically an internal network which allows your instances to not be public but communicate with one another. You only want one instance unless you're setting up more than one WordPress instance and want each one to be on their own separate EC2 instance. IAM role, you can get quite advanced with these, and it's basically a permissions thing. If you hover over any of these, it'll show you a bit more about it. In this case, we don't need it at all. Shutdown behavior, don't set it to terminate, otherwise when you turn off your machine, then you will just lose all of the data. You can enable these if you want. CloudWatch detailed monitoring just gives you a little bit of extra monitoring at a slightly higher price. There's not much you really need here. If you're going on to highly advanced things and you're going to be running behind a load balancer, then you can launch it into an auto scaling group, which will basically duplicate the server and add a new server behind a load balancer. So that's something to consider if your website becomes really big and one server basically can't handle it. You can have incoming requests go to different EC2 instances in the background, with one front end dealing with basically routing the traffic to each one. As for storage, you're not, well, pick how much you're going to need. If it's going to be a small blog, then yeah, this is perfect. 8 gigabytes on a general purpose SSD, that's absolutely fine. If, for example, you're going to be doing a lot of photography, or maybe that you're going to have a lot of contributors and are expecting to be hosting large high quality images or videos even, then you might want to look at adding more space here. But again, it's not too hard to configure at a later date once you run out of space. It's a question of price, really. 8 gigabytes is definitely not a lot of space, but it's more than enough if you're going to be writing, for example, a tech blog. You're not going to need any tags, not in this case. They're for more advanced things, categorizing things, and If you're using Chef and Ansible or some other configuration deployment, then it might be useful here, or it is useful here, but in this case, for just launching one instance, it's not that useful. We'll create a new security group here, and we'll call it WordPress, just WordPress generic. The description's fine. I'll change the first part, and I'll leave the creation date. Why not? SSH, you're going to want to add your own IP address. Oh no, my IP address. And then you're going to want to have you're going to want to allow HTTP traffic anywhere, and you're going to want to add HTTPS traffic from anywhere. These are just the who's going to be able to access the server. So basically what these three rules mean are that you're going to be able to SSH into the server, no problem. SSH is over TCP, port 22 is the default, and that's what instances start with, so only you will be able to SSH into the machine. Then on top of that, you're going to have port 80 and 443, that's HTTP and HTTPS, open to everybody. You can at a later date firewall those off, and so on and so forth. So after you've gone through all that, you'll be presented with a review of everything. Give it a quick look over, make sure you haven't missed anything, make sure that you're going to be able to SSH in, make sure that it's the right type, that you're not going to be... It's very easy on AWS to accidentally spend well, hundreds or more if you pick the wrong option and leave it running, or if you don't close things, shut everything down correctly at a later date. So make sure everything's correct here. It shouldn't take long, just give it a quick once over and hit launch. In this instance, I will create a new key pair, and I shall download that and save it as WordPress example.pem, all good, and I can launch this instance now. So it's now being launched, and it shouldn't take more than about 2 minutes. You can see it's already been assigned a public IP address. You can try and hack it if you want, good luck. But as I said, the firewall rules which have been created previously will not allow you to access that. So what I want to do is use the key that I just created, the WordPress example.pem, and I want to use that to log in here as user Ubuntu. So what we have here is it already says it's running. And oh, bad permissions, right. There we go, kind of, maybe. You need to have the permissions set. You can see here it was changed from 644 to 0400. So previously it was actually world readable, as seen by the final 4 in the octet, or the R here means it's world readable. This is group readable. You can't have that. It's just anything downloaded through Firefox here will automatically have 644 permissions. So no execute, but world readable and user readable. So I've just changed it to only user readable, which is fine. And after doing that, you can see it took way less than 2 minutes there, and it's already up and running. At this point, it's time to actually set up your WordPress instance. So you have a public IP address, and you have just logged into your new instance using the provided. Don't lose this, by the way. Using the provided private key, and the IP address and the user Ubuntu. So you're now currently the user Ubuntu. And this IP here, this host name string, is the internal IP address given to, you can see it here, Amazon's AWS automatically assigns this internal DNS name. So EU West compute, internal compute is like the EC2 section, and this is the IP address identifying it. You can see it, the type and the VPC and other things in here. Now, while I'm still in the Amazon console, I'm going to go into the RDS section, because this actually does take a little minute to set up. And I'm going to launch a new database. It's going to be a MariaDB. I prefer this to MySQL, but you can pick whichever one you want. Aura, I've never tried, but the only options are quite expensive, so MariaDB is fairly cheap. I'll just click dev test for the moment. I'd advise picking, back here, I would advise picking production, if that, or just this if you're going into a production environment, but this is just an example, so I'll click this. As it says, it's eligible for free tier usage and all that. We'll click this. So clicking this just hides some of the options that we're not going to be using anyway, or I'm not going to be using anyway. You can decide, you can add things like multi-availability zone deployment. That means that your database will be automatically backed up in another location. So say you pick to deploy it in Frankfurt, or in this case it's going to be Ireland. You can have it in any of these locations as a backup, which means if your database ever for some reason does get destroyed, it can be automatically backed up or restored from another location, and you can have automatic rollover for if it fails, meaning no downtime and so on. But again, it's more expensive. It's approximately double the price. It whittles down your classes to only having one available. You can pick whichever one you want. I'll pick the most recent database engine class. And were there any others? You can't pick the storage type either. So or you can't pick it. You can't change it if it's in the free tier. I'm just going to leave the default 5 gig. And the database identifier, we can call it WP test, WP test. Pick a password here, and hopefully I remember that in the future. Okay. And we continue on to the next section, the final section, advanced settings. You probably won't have to change anything in here. You want the default, you want to put it in the VPC that you previously picked. I'm not putting it into one that might have access to other machines. Subnet group is, well, fine. Publicly accessible. Now this, you can set this to yes or no. If it's publicly accessible, it will assign a public IP address to your RDS instance, RDS being your database. I tend to pick this, tend to set this to no, but that means it will only be accessible from within your virtual machine. And it's purely a security preference in my case. I don't want people logging in or doing random scans to find the database and being able to log in or attempt to brute force passwords and so on and so forth. The availability zone, I have no preference here, but some people might want to put it in A, B, or C. And I'll create a new security group for this one just to make sure that this machine here and its IP address can access the IP address which gets assigned through this VPC. The database name, I think I called everything WP test. This is fine, this is fine. You can set, this is just a test, so I'm going to disable backups, but you can automatically have up to 35 days of backups created. Again, there's a slight cost to this, but it's not an enormous cost. You could easily do it yourself with a cron job, should you wish to. Just even on this machine, you could make a database backup or set it to backup to S3 if you want. S3 is in here, which is the storage section. It gives you basically unlimited storage. Again, it's up to you. This is certainly the most easy option. You just click one and that's it done. I'm not going to enable enhanced monitoring. Again, it's up to you. It costs a bit more, but it gives you more detailed statistics from within the AWS console. Auto minor version upgrades, I'm fine with that. And maintenance window, I'm going to click no preference for now, but should you actually want a preference, you can choose whenever you like. So let's go ahead and launch that. And it says, note, your instance may take a few minutes to launch. In this case, they actually do tend to take a couple of minutes to launch. They go through this whole creating, and then it creates like backup schedules and things of that kind. So it can take a couple of minutes before you're able to actually log in. And as you can see, like there's no mention of here the endpoint. There's no way of accessing this until it's all been set up and this changes to OK or available. So yeah, there's now we've got our database and we've got a server on which we can deploy WordPress. So this is back to the server. We will I prefer Nginx. I think it's just an overall better mechanism to. I think it's a better web server than Apache. So it's up to you. You can use either or. So if I do, so I'm now root. I've just entered a root shell. Okay, I didn't realize there was actually a WordPress package in apt in the package management. So I accidentally just installed that, which is based on Apache, and I would prefer to do it via Nginx. So what I've done is I've removed that previous package and I'm installing php-fpm and Nginx. I just did that previously, so it's already installed. php-fpm is what Nginx uses in order to use PHP. It doesn't use mod PHP like Apache does. Now, if you look on this page here, you will see Nginx installation instructions, and it's worth reading through this to see how virtual hosts work. You can it's not that complex. You can see almost all of this is comments. There's a file here, there's a server name. Basically there's only like 3 uncommented things in this entire block. It's very, very easy. And in your etc Nginx, the config location, you'll see you have sites available and sites enabled. In sites available, you have a default, and if we take a look in there, sites available default has basically everything commented out, but the user share Nginx HTML will return the default if you try to load this, which is just a welcome to Nginx page. We don't really want this, so you can actually, if you want, you can remove sites enabled default, but if you then look in sites available, you'll see it's still there. So the way you actually configure you configure your virtual host is by creating a config file in sites available and then creating a symlink via ln-s, and you then do sites available default and sites enabled. So you would symlink it from sites available to sites enabled. Therefore, your configuration changes no matter where you change it, and you can delete it to turn it off without actually deleting the configuration file. So now we need to create our configuration file. I've saved some in here, and with any luck they will work. If we show the server.conf, which is basically going to be my site, I'm going to call it sites available my site.conf, and I'm going to put that in there, and this is going to use a root of home, Ubuntu, my site, WordPress. You can change this to whatever you want. It's going to use index.php as the index file, and access and error logs will be in, well, they're going to have their own access and error logs. They'll be in varlog nginx, which is where all the other error logs are stored, but it's going to be my site.access, my site.error. And we have an include wordpress.conf, which contains configurations for WordPress which allow you to, well, I'll speak about that later. I'm now going to create a link from my site.conf to sites enabled. And if we look in sites enabled, okay, I think that's a broken symlink. I think you need to use the full etc. Nginx, that's sites available. Yeah, right. So sites enabled, delete the sites enabled symlink, create it again, and there you go. mysite.conf in sites enabled now links to that. And if you do nginx-t, you can see nginx-t is very handy. Before you ever restart Nginx, you should run nginx-t, because that will verify the configuration. Because if you try to reload or restart after and you have an invalid syntax, it will probably break your website. So I'm going to do an update because I think the HTTP2 thing is only in a later version of Nginx. And if we do a test, no, it's still not working. Okay, so I'm simply going to remove that line. It works on mine, but obviously not here. Actually, I can remove the listening for that. Okay, so that's fine. It's looking for wordpress.conf. My wordpress.conf here contains, you can find this online as well, it basically contains PHP options. So let's put that in there. So this file basically, I can go quickly through it. This rewrites sitemap, rewrites the sitemap for indexing by Google and so on. This changes the admin page to go to a specific, well, as you can see above, it's commented, add a trailing slash. The location, this is for images and such, so it will try to find a file like robots.txt. If it exists, it will use that file or directory. If not, it will go to index.php. And when it goes to index.php, these are just fast CGI options, which was installed previously. And at the bottom here we have, if you want to install a specific, there is an Nginx WordPress cache, a WordPress cache configuration file, which you can also add, which will, well, as you would expect, it's better caching. So it will save in memory the pages unless they're updated, and it will save them for 60 minutes, which can speed up it reduces disk access and so on and so forth. It's good reading if you want to read it. And then robots.txt is specifically allowed. We disable not found in case we don't have a robots.txt. Turn off the access log because we don't really care about robots.txt spam. This doesn't necessarily have to be a WordPress thing. It could go into your main Nginx config or into another global configuration. And we turn off access log for basically these kind of files with RAR files, images, and text files, because they're not that important. They clutter up your log files. You can remove that if you wish. And this is specifically to allow accessing PHP files in uploads. So that's our WordPress config. Let's check. Line 22 of WordPress.com. Oh, we don't have a fast CGI, so this is our fast CGI here. I'm just going to copy that over. Again, easy to find this. I'm just going to check if we have any other. It may well be in. Okay, so this was already there. I think we should just change this instead to. So what was the error? Couldn't find. fastcgi.conf because it's called fastcgi _ params. fastcgi.conf. So we're just going to change this to fastcgi params, and hopefully that should work. Okay, so we now have a working at least a correctly configured a syntax. At least we have a configuration with no syntax errors, so we can easily do service nginx restart. Sorry, this section is a bit of a mess. This is by far the most complicated section. If we look back to our AWS, we have RDS. Our database is available. We can actually give that a quick test now and just see that it's. Do we have mmap? No. No, we don't. So let's install MySQL client and we're gonna use that host, so port 3306 -u wp test -p. Dun, dun, dun. It looks like it's maybe firewalled. So since we're here, we'll look at this, and if we click onto the second section, onto security groups, which we haven't really configured. If you remember, it's not publicly accessible, but what we're going to do is add a rule that MySQL can connect from, and we're going to add a custom, we're going to allow it to connect from the same so we're going to add this. So this line here hopefully allows this server to connect. Unknown database. 206. I got the password wrong. There we go. See, now I'm connected. So adding this firewall rule here, this is an internal IP address to Amazon created by the VPC being the subnet group. And the /24 at the end means basically a wildcard in place of that 0. You could equally, if this is a bit complex for you, because you need to know a bit of networking to know what's going on here, you could just choose anywhere. And while slightly less secure, the fact that you didn't give it a public IP address means that it's still only going to be connectable from this machine here, but from the EC2 instance you spun up earlier. But if you add any more servers into that VPC, they would also be able to connect. So this is slightly more secure, and this is actually silly because it doesn't have a public IP address, so I can't connect to it from my home IP. So this should be fine, unless, yeah, okay. So for example, if we do very good with my typos. You can see our WP test database is in MySQL, and we've just confirmed that you can connect from our EC2 instance to the WordPress test. So we already have a lot set up in this sort of however long 20-minute video. We've got our EC2 instance running. You can see it here, it's all running, it's all fine. You can monitor what's been going on. We'll make this a little bit bigger. You can see CPU utilization and all your standard things. I would advise just taking a look through all of this because it is interesting. If we go back to RDS, or well here, you can see that our database is online, and it's actually really easy to configure things like automated backups, multi-availability zone deployments, all kinds of things. It can get ridiculously expensive for these databases. You can create read-only replicas, you can create multiple of them. There's a lot of configuration you can do, and a lot you can do to expand into the future as your site grows. So after this, we have Nginx working. Service. One thing I don't like is that Nginx is that where was I going with this? Yeah, that Ubuntu doesn't use system control, which is the system of managing services. At least this version doesn't. I'm far more accustomed to that these days than the older format. Now we have a 404, file not found. So why would that be? Probably, if we look in varlog nginx, you can see your mysite.access and mysite.errorlog both exist, and mysite.access log actually has some content. So you see there's one 404, that's me from my IP address attempting to connect to the site. So we've just verified by loading this page that we're no longer seeing the default, which we deleted from sites enabled. You can see we have default and my site within sites available, and within sites enabled we have my site as a symlink to mysite.conf. So that's a symlink to this. Perfect. So this is now showing a 404 not found, and that is going to be because we didn't actually create the the directory structure for our WordPress instance. So time to go to wordpress.org/download. You can see I've been here before. We're going to download the tar.gz. I think it's slightly smaller, and yeah, it is slightly smaller, and why not? We'll drop out of being root, and now I believe I called it I think I called it my site, and in there I called it WordPress. So I'm going to use wget to grab latest.tar.gz at a lovely 7.4 megabytes, and you can see it here. I'm going to extract that. That's going to appear in WordPress, and then I'm going to data WordPress. So I'm making everything owned by WordPress, and if we go back here, okay, we're now running PHP. As you can see, we got redirected to wp-admin setup config.php, but we're missing the MySQL extension. The MySQL says so here we go. PHP5 MySQL. I guess we missed that. We'll just install that, and here you go. Everything is set up, and you can continue now installing your WordPress instance. Let's go. Under database name, wp test, username, wp test, password. What did I use? A highly secure ABCD1234. And the database host, this you're going to have to take from your RDS instance and the endpoint here. So if we take this, and where were we? Here. With any luck, perfect. So you're now ready to run the installation. I'm going to go into here and just go into the WordPress directory. You can see everything in here. This is a standard WordPress installation. www.data has access to everything here. Stat dot has read write execute on this directory, so it should. There you go. We're now at the point where you can install your WordPress on AWS in your EC2 instance. Easy as that. As you can see, it took, well, the length of this video to install it, but now you're connected to this, to your RDS instance, through your EC2 instance, this one right here. It's actually pretty damn secure because you've got a segregation of components. So for example, by that I mean your WordPress is running here on this server, your EC2 server, VPS. Your RDS instance is running here as a separate database on a separate machine that's not publicly accessible. Your WordPress instance is only accessible to you over SSH, and for other people, if they do a scan of the website, they will only see ports 80 and 443, nothing else. If we look at what's listening, you see only 80 and 22 are open anyway. There's no, if we try to go to HTTPS, that won't work. I might do an example of how to set up Let's Encrypt to have strong SSL encryption in the future, as in HTTPS, which you really should have. But from this point onwards, it's all up to you. Choose a site name, username, password, email address and set up your WordPress. It's really not that difficult. It really doesn't take that much time. It's secure. It's a good segregation of the elements that make up your website. You can easily set up, you can easily expand it from here to have things like make backups of your instance and the content therein. You can back it up to S3 and have unlimited storage. Well, unlimited, pretty much unlimited. You can have up to 35 days of backups with your database. You can back it up to another availability zone. All of these things, and I mean, as this is installed here, it's pretty well secured. There's maybe one last thing I might do. WP content is where uploads go, and you can't upload if you don't have write permissions. So I would typically go through find WP content, but I only want the directories. I said D, sorry, my bad. So find WP content. I think there's an uploads directory in there. Wow. What I typically do is find type D print OX args -0 75. Should be 755? Yeah. Why did I put that minus in again? Making mistakes here, but there we go. That should allow uploads into all of your WP content. So you have a pretty secure setup already. You have a small instance which won't cost you that much, and is easily scalable. You can easily turn it into auto scale, apply auto scaling to it, and have multiple websites in the background. You have a database running in RDS, which is very easy to upgrade. If you instance actions here and in here, if in the future you realize the database is getting hammered, you can upgrade it to anything here you want. This X large one costs thousands per month, so don't do that. But you literally choose one of these and it'll take up to 30 minutes, but in my experience it's been about 10 minutes with maybe a minute's downtime. And it's literally that easy. So as your site scales, you can scale the database quite easily with it. You can deploy a read replica should you want to. You can change the Nginx configuration to have caching, and there you go. So I'm going to stop the video here, and thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and if you could leave any feedback on things you'd like to see. I know it's been a while since I did one of these types of videos before, but well, thank you for watching.